Assalamu alaikum. Hi, Oracle, Reiki, spiritual healer. And I got my DoorDash delivered earlier today from the grocery store, so I'm about to get ready to cook me something to eat. And I thought that I would just check in with you guys because, I got on one of these scarves from my husband. And every time I wear this scarf, and I love this scarf because, he picked it out. He loved this color. So, these are some of the things that I like to do when I wear his scarf. I'm going to tell you a story. So, when you are a chosen one, you will have to decipher, who your friends are. You will have to decipher who your family members are. A year, 2021, 2022, after my husband passing, I was just chilling out, going to take care of my father. But I noticed that the friends that I had, none of them had called to check on me. But yet and still, they would call me and say, well, come on over here. And, okay, these are kind of things that we have to look at as chosen ones. And I saw it early on. So I stopped going to hang around my friends just because of that issue. And I started running my business. When I stopped hanging around them and I started opening up my own caregiver business, the homes and rooms and things of that nature, then my financial success, it thrived. My business, it thrived. And I would have, on occasion, some of my friends just call me and say, come on over here. We miss you. We come chill out. You haven't been over here with us. And ultimately, I kept telling them during this time, they never asked how I was doing. Having that, I had been widowed. They never asked how I was doing, but they wanted me to come because when I come over there, we're going to have a good time. It's going to be a party when I come. Okay, I didn't think that I was the best person in the world. And nobody should think that. But I had to really just look at who I was surrounded by. Because soon as I said, well, I could come out. I got some free time. I'm over here chilling with my dad or whatever. I'll need somebody to replace me, a sitter. I hear crickets. You don't want to spend your money for me to come out, then you don't want me to come out. I had to really check people who I was surrounded by. I didn't mind, going around people that I knew. I didn't mind that at all. But what I did mind is people who wasn't able to be in the spaces where they were and be prosperous. There was nobody that I was surrounded by that was prosperous, who had, opened up their own shop or, could offer some kind of advice. There was nobody. So, and I had to ultimately tell people that, when they kept calling me and they never said, how's your husband? It is because they didn't care about how my husband was. And ultimately, they didn't care about how I was. And I ultimately had to tell them that, I've outgrown you guys. I'm not coming back. I'm going to build my business. I'm in it for my retirement. I don't see anything, okay, if you want me to come over there, then, I got my father here, and he needs to have a person here, 24 hours a day. So when you go to talking like that, then, you get crickets. Because, as long as they can reap the benefits of your energy when you come around. We're gonna get a bottle. We're gonna smoke Black and Milds. We're gonna smoke one. We're gonna drink tequila, and that's not the problem. The problem is there is no growth. And with the men and the women, there is no growth. There is no one that I could go and get $5,000-$10,000 from. I couldn't go, but ultimately there would be people that would say things like, oh, you're rich, or whatever. No, I'm not rich. I'm handling my business. I'm running my business. And, if I needed some help, I would have to go to, the Russians, or, the Japanese people, some people like that. Mustafa, the African. I would have to go to someone like that, because these so-called friends, and that's what, I had to look at. They didn't have my back. They wasn't praying for themselves. So that I know that they wasn't praying for me or anybody else in the hood. They were out for self. So if I must say something, when I start stepping back and I'm able to look at who I'm surrounded by, and I'm doing this right now as I speak. When I look at who I'm surrounded by, what my circle is comprised of, are they praying people? Do they pray for me? Are they, are we praying for each other? Situations. Are we praying that we come together and unify? Are these people able to stand up and let God be their head and lead them? Ultimately, these are the things that I look at, especially in men, because those are the men that I came from. So, it's all good to have fun. You want to have fun. You want to enjoy yourself, but you cannot enjoy yourself, when you see that there's no growth. There's nobody praying. There's nobody, able to get on a religious, platform level. There's no one that's willing to elevate, or you can elevate with. So when you're checking out your surroundings, and that's what I usually do, I usually wait sometimes 5-6 months, a year, and I start checking out my surroundings. Once I start elevating to a different level, and I'm like, that person's not on my level. That person doesn't want to change. That person is a misogynist. That person is a narcissist. That person is a thief. That person is a gossip. That person is a hater. So these are the type of things that, I look at, because I'm constantly praying. And I come from a people that constantly pray. So you can't get around me. You can't get over me, because I'm constantly praying, for my elevation, for my safety, for my protection, from the enemy, from the avowed enemy. And ultimately, when I looked around, I started to see, in my past life, because that's what I'm going to call it, that there had been people inserted, by some of my friends, some of my so-called friends, in order to, keep me at a low vibrational level. So, when they call, I was supposed to, come jumping, or, that person right there that's with me, they're getting something out of, oh, let's go over there. No, you're getting something out of this. You go over there. Those are your people. You go over there. I'm going to stay over here, and, I'm going to build the haberdashery. I'm going to build the candy lady, and I'm going to build, my caregiving business from the ground up. And, once I get finished doing that, whatever God tells me to do, I'm going to cash all of it in and take all the money with me. Because I have nobody that is on my level that I can share it with. I have nobody that I can speak, life into, and nobody can speak life into me. So when you see those kinds of, red flags, in the people that you're around, in the so-called friends, in the friendship that's constantly calling you, and beckoning you to come over there where they are. They're having such a great time. Everything is not a party. And when you have a people, when you're friends with people that everything is a party and nobody levels up for, their old age, and their term is, we live and we die. But a lot of the time that you spent in these places just partying is enough for you to level up and retire off of, if you put yourself in perspective. So when I started to put myself in perspective, I ultimately had to let go of friends, family, so-called friends, people who had been inserted in my life. And, when I looked around, I probably had one person. I had one person left, possible two. So these are telltale signs that God has intervened in your life and separated you from the entity, from these people who didn't want anything for themselves and didn't want anything for you. When this happens, you'll lose everybody. You'll lose everybody. You'll lose friends, family, so-called friends, husbands, lovers, wives, girlfriends, boyfriends. You'll lose those people. Because you're no longer, able to be manipulated. You're no longer able, to run game on. And once that happens, you'll lose everyone that you're surrounded by, because they will be exposed. God will expose them to you. That they don't mean you any well, because they don't mean themselves any well. They don't have a plan for their own lives, and the only thing that they want to do is play and be amused, and that's not reasonable for the chosen one. The chosen one will have to separate from those people who have been exposed as being narcissists, demonic, and toxic people in their lives. People who really was not friends. So if I was to, say anything about the people that I was surrounded with, I knew early on that they were not friends. It just took me to level up, to separate myself, and to take a deep look at who I was surrounded by. So I hope that this has helped you in order to, reassess your life, in order to reassess your relationships that you have, to reassess your friendships. If you would like, you could reach out to me in the description below and book a session. You can book a consultation. Also, you can donate and request a topic. I'm High Oracle, Reiki Spiritual Healer. Assalamu alaikum.